The Mariners are now just one game under 500 after sweeping the Padres. Now they're enjoying a much needed day off, but we ain't taking the day off here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Wednesday, July 6, 2022, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am your host, Haggerty Gonzalez, joined as always by my co-host, Colby Patton. We cover the Mariners over at InsideTheMariners.com for Fan Nation over on the Sports Illustrated Network. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at LO_Mariners. Follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Be sure to also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Control the Zone. We post 2 additional podcasts on there every single week. And if this is your first time joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, welcome to the show. If you like what you hear, give us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. We're going to be talking about Andres Munoz later on in the show, who has been one of the best relievers in baseball for the last 5 or 6 weeks. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the standings and where the Mariners sit right now in the wild card race with 10 games to go until the All-Star break. But first, let's get into yesterday's game, because we recorded yesterday's episode before the game happened. Did not do our typical post-game show. Let's look back on this one and take a look at Logan Gilbert, who went 5 1/3 innings and was not very sharp for the second start in a row. He strikes out just 1, walks 3, gives up 2 runs, only one of them earned, the other one coming off of a booted ball by Adam Frazier. But Gilbert was pretty lucky to get out of this one with just that damage done to him, right?
Yeah, it's actually been pretty touch and go for the last 3 or 4 starts. It's just really started to kind of show up stats-wise in the last 2. We've said this before. I guess we'll say it again. Logan Gilbert does not have tremendous stuff. Not a stuff guy, right? I mean, he's not Sandy Alcantara. He's got a very good fastball that plays up because of the extension he gets. And he's got probably, slightly above average and kind of a fringe average change in curveball. He is not a stuff guy. So what that means is that the fastball, he has to get value out of it. Because the other off-speed pitches, he doesn't control them well enough yet or consistently enough to live on those pitches. And they're also not so filthy that he's going to get a ton of swing and miss on them. So he has to have the fastball. And yesterday, the fastball, it was very clear the Padres had a plan. They wanted to hunt the fastball early in counts because they knew they were going to get it. They took good swings at it. Gilbert was very little command. 3 walks isn't terrible, but in 5 1/3 it's not ideal. Obviously, there were a lot of misses, and then when he did throw the fastball for a strike, it was usually in the middle of the plate. Even when it was elevated, it was still middle of the plate. So Gilbert has to have the fastball. He has to have 55 command of the fastball, or he's going to struggle like he did yesterday. And if Gilbert's going to struggle and go 5 innings and give up 1 earned, then fine, you take it. That's a pretty good bad start. But it is something he's going to have to hammer out here. His next start will be against the Nationals, I believe, unless the Mariners change things up with their rotation with the off day today. So we'll see. He's going to end up with, I believe, 2 more starts before the All-Star break. We'll see how the fastball control command looks there. But he has got to spot the fastball, and he's got to get ahead with it so that the other pitches can play, unless, of course, he's going to switch up his style of pitching and start throwing the slider for first pitch strikes, which seems unlikely. So he's got to have the fastball figured out.
So any reason to be concerned right now after these last couple starts? No. Yeah.
No. Gilbert is extremely cerebral. He is a worker. It's part of the reason the Mariners fell in love with him in the draft process. It's part of the reason they called him up after only 1 AAA start. He's going to figure this out. He's going to make adjustments. He has throughout his entire career already. We've seen him change grips on the changeup. We've seen him throw the slider a little bit harder. We've seen him embrace pitching up in the zone. So no, there's no cause for concern yet. We hear word, oh well, he's kind of battling some shoulder fatigue or something. Then be a little concerned, but
Right.
for now, no. And it's also worth noting that Gilbert, hasn't pitched, for 4 straight months to start a year, really ever. I mean, I remember last year he basically didn't pitch in games until May. So maybe there's a little bit of fatigue here. Maybe he needs the All-Star break. We'll see how he looks with the extra day's rest. But no, I don't think there's any cause for concern because, like I said, I mean, if you go 5 innings and give up 1 run against the Padres and that's a bad start, got to feel okay about your chances going forward, right?
Yeah. So on the offensive end, the Mariners gave themselves enough of a cushion to survive Gilbert's rather poor start, and things got a little bit interesting there for the bullpen, but they were able to hold it down the rest of the way. But yeah, the offense comes through with 6 more runs. They added a pair of insurance runs in the top of the 9th. That was huge from J.P. Crawford, a huge triple over the head of Trent Grisham. But I think the MVP of the day for the Mariners was Sam Haggerty, old Ham Swaggerty, who comes through with his second 3-hit game since being called back up. He goes 3 for 4, including a home run off of Mike Clevenger to break the ice for the Mariners. I mean, Haggerty's been pretty good so far, right?
Yeah. There seems to be something about Dylan Moore hitting 8th and Haggerty hitting 9th, which causes them both to play well at the same time. Remember the game in Texas that they basically won by themselves? There was another one on the homestand. I think it was against Boston. I want to say the one game they won in Boston. I think Demo and Haggerty had a pretty big hand in that. But yeah, Haggerty does a lot of things well. He makes a lot of contact. He runs very well. He is a competent defender no matter where you put him. There's a lot to like in Sam Haggerty. There's also some, major concerns. You don't want to play him every day because he will be exposed. But he is a part-time player, just like Dylan Moore is. You got to give these two guys credit. They're playing pretty well as they're covering for first J.P. Crawford and now Jesse Winker. And the Mariners need it because, this wasn't a game where Julio was the star. Julio went 2 for 5. But they were, 2 flare hits and he struck out 3 times. He had a tough time picking up the slider, and Suarez was 0 for 5 and Santana had just a single and Raleigh, 1 for 4. Like there were no big performances with the exception of Dylan Moore, Sam Haggerty. And then obviously JP, 1 for 4, but obviously the big triple, he did hit the ball hard 2 other times aside from the triple. So JP's come off his suspension and so far has looked very good.
I believe that's 5 or 6 hard hit balls over the last 2 games. So good stuff from JP. Good to see that he hasn't missed a beat. Actually, it seems like he's kind of fixed some things a little bit because he widened there before the suspension. So that's good to see from JP. But yeah, Haggerty's been a solid player. Good bat to ball skills, decent defender with some versatility, some good speed, and all that stuff. Like he's pretty valuable all around. He did have that little interesting MLB The Show-esque miscue with the base running
misclick.
I'm going like I don't think that he actually touched first. Looking back on it, Jason Churchill, Prospect Insider, first pointed this out.
Does that really matter though?
Yeah, no, not at all. Because that was still a really confusing. Let's just call it. It was a dumb decision by Sam Haggerty to start running to third. He was at second. He just reached second by the time that the ball reached second, and then he just kept running. He just kept running and running and running.
I guess he thought he could outrun the pitcher to third base, but the problem was the pitcher was like halfway between third base and the mound. So
and then Machado was there too, right? Like Machado was the one that ended up putting the tag on.
I thought that was the pitcher. I mean, the base wasn't as uncovered as Haggerty thought it was.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe he just thought, well, they already booted it once, and then the night before they had that interesting throw to third, let's say, and so I'll take my chances, I guess. But that was weird. But he hit the home run, I think at 109 miles an hour. So I guess we'll forgive him this time around.
Yeah. Wow.
I believe he also stole a base. So combo meal for Sam Haggerty last night.
Sam Haggerty with the flexing the muscles. in this game. How about that? 109 off of the bat. I didn't think that he had that in him, but hey,
Yeah.
why
I
not?
mean,
The ball was
he's,
flying all over Petco Park, by the way.
but not to center
Shoot.
field.
Yeah, weird,
Raleigh
right?
touched that one up like to dead center field, and it just died before it got to the track. It was weird.
But the Mariners had 18 hard hit balls on Monday, and then I think combined the Padres and the Mariners had like 20 something hard hit balls in yesterday's game as well. And there was like they had already cracked 10 by the third inning or something like that. Just a lot of hard contact in this series. Pretty wild.
Yeah, the Mariners had 10 hard hit balls yesterday. The Padres had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13. So yeah. I mean, it's kind of makes sense. The Mariners did a lion's share of the hard hits yesterday, but
Yeah.
Gilbert was in the middle of the plate. So yeah, he's in. Gilbert's a guy who's usually going to give up kind of hard contact because he lives on the fastball. So, but yeah, it was nice, and somehow the Mariners score 14 and the Padres score 4. Baseball.
And we absolutely love it. And I was completely wrong on our little crossover that we did with Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres. Yeah. But I unfortunately said on there that I didn't think the Mariners were going to be able to get a sweep. I thought split series at best. And I mean, to be fair, who can blame me given the circumstances? But hey, good, hats off to the Mariners for what they were able to do in this series.
They got dominated by Austin Pruitt less than 24 hours before. So yeah, I think that was a pretty fair, fair thought process. But yeah, happy to be wrong when the Mariners prove me wrong.
Yeah, and everyone across this roster contributing to it. Just an all-around team series. Not to be too cliche about it, but that's kind of what it was. Every single phase of the game was working for the Mariners in this one, and every single phase of their roster was really working for them as well. So another star from yesterday's game was Munoz, who statistically has been one of the best relievers in all of baseball over the last 5 or 6 weeks. We're going to be talking about him in just a moment, but real quick, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners is brought by Blue Nile. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as them with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft their perfect engagement ring, and each ring will be a one-of-a-kind. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Mariners listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement jewelry as well. Use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, plus every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. So after Gilbert struggled to get out of the 6, he left runners on the corners with 1 out, and the ball was given to Andres Munoz, who has earned the favor of Scott Service as of late. And he came through against his old team. He gave up a sacrifice fly, did also walk a batter, but then went on to strike out 3 over 1 2/3 innings pitched. He was dominant. He touched 102 miles per hour on the radar gun. He was struggling quite a bit. He had given up 5 earned runs against the Red Sox on May 22nd, but since then he's struck out 27, walked just 3. He's given up just 3 earned runs on 10 hits. He's been incredible over the last 5 or 6 weeks. What have you seen out of Munoz? What's impressing you about him?
Yeah, it's funny because a few weeks ago we were talking about, Munoz shouldn't be a guarantee to be on this roster. He was struggling that poorly. And he's really turned it around. The one thing for me is that he's getting value out of the fastball. If you remember early in the year, hitters were torching his fastball, and regardless of it being 102 miles an hour, it was pretty straight, and it was usually in the middle of the plate. And what we're seeing right now from Munoz is that he's still 98 to 102, but he's actually locating it on the corners a little bit, and he's getting some arm side run to the pitch, which pre Tommy John was something he was known for. The fastball wasn't straight; it did have some run to it. And we're starting to see that again. You saw it on the pitch to strike out Machado. That was a fastball up and away that had run back into Machado, but it was right on the corner. And that's a pitch that if it is, more towards the middle of the plate, it's going a long way. But because it's on the corner, Machado has to be literally perfect with his swing to even touch it. And of course he couldn't. So we're seeing him control the fastball more. We're seeing him get a little more run on the fastball. And it is making the fastball a swing and miss pitch, which is great because the slider was already there. So now you pair a 100-mile-an-hour fastball with some run. It's not crazy run. It's not Sandy Alcantara, 100 miles per hour with 20 inches of break. But it is enough with the 90-mile-per-hour wipeout slider to get a tons of swing and misses. And that's kind of the role that Scott appears to be using Munoz in. Do I need a strikeout here in the sixth? Then I'm going to use Munoz. And what we are starting to see Scott also do is trust Munoz to go more than, one inning. He's going to ask him to get 4 outs. He's going to ask him to get 5 outs when he can. And so Munoz is quickly gaining the trust of Scott's service, rightfully so. And the Mariners are starting to get back to a point where, they have maybe 3 guys now where you can hand the ball to in a high leverage situation. And for the most part, you expect them to get it done. Sewald, Castillo, Munoz, and Swanson's been a little since he's returned from the IL. But
he's looked a little shaky. He looked a little shaky yesterday as well. It wasn't great. And Penn Murphy's been pretty good here and there for the most part. They use him in some weird. They use him in some weird scenarios though, like not down 9-2 against the Orioles last Monday, and here comes Penn Murphy for some reason. That should be Tommy Malone.
Exactly. So I just Murphy's a guy they don't quite trust yet. So they're going to use him as kind of their, hey, let's get out of this inning and then we'll reassess where we are. So, and those are big spots. You get to the 6th and your guy's gone 5 2/3 and there's runners on 2nd and 3rd, and George Springer's up. Hey, well, who's pretty good against righties? Penn Murphy. Let's go get to him. And if he gets out of it, great. And if he doesn't, well, we were down, 3-2 anyways. So, so we'll save Munoz and all of that. So, Murphy's still been pretty good. Like I said, Castillo's been very good lately. Sewald certainly looks better his last few times out. And then Swanson, right now, he's just doesn't quite have the fastball command that he did earlier. But I think that'll probably come. So,
yeah. So Munoz is now the American League leader in Ks per 9, 13.64, surpassed Liam Hendricks yesterday. And then, unfortunately, that was the only revenge game that we got in this series. Unfortunately, Luis Torrens, Taylor Trammell, and Ty France all on the injured list. But Colby, you put out a tweet earlier today from our Control the Zone account that looked at that trade that brought Torrens, Trammell, France, and Munoz over from the Padres back in 2020 at the trade deadline. And so far, those 4 guys have combined to earn 8.5 baseball reference WAR. Now, Austin Nola, Austin Adams, and Dan Altavilla, the 3 players that went over to the Padres in that deal, have combined for just 2.5 beat WAR. And honestly, yesterday, I didn't even remember that Austin Nola played in that game.
The Mariners should go get Austin Nola for Penn Murphy. I think that's a fair trade. But it's worth noting too. I didn't put this in the tweet, but I did find it humorous. Ty France this year alone, and keep in mind he's missed the last 2 weeks, has been worth 3 wins.
Wow,
by himself. So AJ Preller is very bad at his job.
Yeah, the first half of 2022, Ty France is more valuable than anything AJ Preller got back in that deal. That's and the Padres didn't end up doing anything in 2020 anyway. They made it to the postseason and lost to the Dodgers, right?
2020, yes, and then 2021, the disaster. So AJ Preller's terrible at his job, and keep in mind that the Mariners have used. They've just now started to use Munoz regularly. Taylor Trammell hasn't really gotten an extended look in the big leagues quite yet for other reasons. And Luis Torrens, we'll see. I mean, Torrens probably is the worst piece of that trade, but you got 1 really good year of production from him and another so far about half a year of a really good backup, high quality backup catcher. Like, I mean, Munoz and Torrens is probably going to win that trade alone, just those two pieces. But the fact that Ty France has already beaten them, all three of them, in 70 games, it's okay. They have Eric Hosmer. They didn't need Ty France.
Yeah. Dan Altavilla now, isn't he pitching in Japan or something, or Korea?
I think so.
I don't think he's pitching in the U.S. now.
He is,
wherever
he
it
is
is.
not. No.
Yeah, and then Austin Adams, I think, is still with the Padres, right?
I believe he's hurt again, though.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because he is nasty when he's healthy. Yeah, he was a lot of fun to watch when he was with the Mariners. But yeah, chills. Jerry did it again, and that's not even to mention the other trade that he made with the Padres right before the deadline, which brought Matt Brash over for like 3 innings of Taylor Williams. Whatever it was. Yeah. Matt Brash could be a pretty big piece of this bullpen, which is starting to surge a little bit here in the second half of the season. All right, so we're going to be looking at the standings because they're starting to look a little more favorable for the Mariners after their recent hot stretch, and hopefully they can keep it going. We'll be looking at the standings in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. So the Mariners got even more help yesterday after sweeping the Padres. The Guardians lost in a blowout to the Tigers, which, wow, if you're getting blown out by the Tigers, you should probably look inward there a little bit. And then the Blue Jays lost again to the A's, and they're playing the A's right now. But the Blue Jays have lost the first 2 games of the series. We'll see how they do to finish out this series and see if they can at least grab one. But right now, the Mariners are 3.5 back of Toronto for the third and final wild card spot. And on top of that, they're just 1 game back of the Guardians. So, now that the Blue Jays are coming to town, there's a non-zero chance here, Colby, that the Mariners are able to play themselves into a wild card spot. A very, 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 very small chance. Want to emphasize that as much as possible here, but a chance nonetheless that with a sweep, and assuming that they lose and if they lose to the A's today as well, the Mariners could actually solely hold on to the third and final wild card spot in the AL. Heading into Washington. So let's be more realistic here, though. We set out our goals for this stretch of games for the Mariners, but now seeing what they've been able to do, of course they got to go 5-3 over their next 9 games to make it to, 6-4 over the next 10 games to make it above it. Thank you. By the All-Star break. But does that goal change a little bit for you? Is it like, do your feelings still stay the same about the Mariners heading into the All-Star break if they are a couple of games under 500?
If they stay where they're at right now, if they're, a game under 5, let's say they go 5-5, right? They're a game under 500, but they're still just a game back of Cleveland and 3.5 back of Toronto. Then no, I think you're still right where you want to be aggressiveness wise. It's still a little bit about what Chicago does behind you and what Texas does behind you and what Baltimore does behind you. Not the Angels though; they have their own issues. So I don't know. You're going to start a
2-7 since the brawl, by the way.
You're going to sign a brawl. You better win. But hey, good for you. You exposed yourself for nothing. Enjoy. By the way, fun note, the Angels are closer to the Tigers in the standings than they are the Mariners now. But anyways, of course I had to throw that in there. No, I think if you go 5-5, you're going to be buyers. And, we talked about, they're going to be buyers regardless, at least for 2023. They're going to try and buy players like that. But if you're right in this range come the All-Star break, and honestly probably now, you shouldn't cross rentals off of your checklist. I mean, if they were where the Angels were and they were 7 back with 5 to pass, then yeah, rentals probably don't make any sense. But because they're only a game back of Cleveland, because they're only 3.5 back as of this recording from Toronto, I mean, they've gained 3 games on Cleveland and they've gained 4 games on Toronto in the last week.
Yeah.
They've also gained, I believe, 3 games overall on Texas, kind of pushed them further down the standings. And they've gained, I think, 2 games on Chicago. So they're gaining ground fast. By the way, nobody in this wild card race is playing that well. The Mariners are playing the best ball right now. And of all the non-division leading teams, the second hottest team right now is actually the Detroit Tigers. So, who are definitely not.
I guess Riley Green has just completely changed the face of that organization. All of a sudden.
Guess kudos to Baltimore. They've also won 3 in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah.
By the way, did you see that game last night between the Orioles?
I saw
and the
the
Rangers?
highlights. Yeah, the Orioles hit a game-tying home run in the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah.
Like,
Odor in the last inning too, because he made an error and it allowed Simeon to get on, and then Seager followed that up with a 2-run home run to go ahead, and then next inning Odor hits a game-tying home run. It was great. It was amazing. That game was awesome. Yeah, against his former team too, and he pointed at the dugout as he was rounding third. It was great. I love that.
Odor is kind of a chump, but he is entertaining a lot of times. So.
I believe it was Jake Mintz of Cespedes BBQ last night who said, "This is the most entertaining zero WAR player ever."
Yeah, it's probably pretty accurate. But no, yeah, I think the team just has to go 5-5, and they'll be in a good position to buy. And it's they have a shot here if they can take 3 or 4 from Toronto even. Toronto will still hold the wild card spot, but obviously at that point, all the momentum is with Seattle. And then, the next weekend, they have a shot to kind of bury the Rangers in a 4-game set. They go into Texas, or Texas comes here. I can't remember.
They go to Texas, so they're going. Yeah, it's a really the scheduling is at its worst here. So they go to San Diego for 2, then come back home for 4 in Toronto or against Toronto. Then they're going all the way across the country to DC for 2 against the Nationals. Then they're going back to Texas for 4 in Arlington, and then it's the All-Star break, and then I think they're back home after that. But that is mind-numbing. I don't know what the schedule makers were thinking with that at all.
Why wouldn't they just flip the Texas series and the Toronto series? They're both 4 games, whatever. Anyways,
I don't know.
So if they take 3 or 4 from Toronto, they take 3 or 4 against Texas. Not only is Toronto is Toronto collapsing, not only is that narrative starting, but you also more or less bury the Rangers, depending on what the Rangers do between now and when you play them. Because you could add 2 games and all of a sudden you could be up by 5 or 6 on Texas. Heading into the break, and it is important. We focus so much on the teams that are ahead of Seattle, rightfully so, but you also need to pay attention to the teams behind Seattle, which right now is Chicago, Texas, and we'll say Baltimore.
And look, really, the only team that I'm concerned about that group out of that group is Chicago, because they have the most talent. They have the most major league established talent.
It really feels to me like the 3 wild card spots are going to come down to Boston, Tampa, Toronto, Seattle, Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't trust Cleveland, and they're not playing very well right now. But I think Cleveland's going to collapse a little bit. I don't think they're that good of a roster.
Yeah, the roster's just not great. I'm very surprised that they're in the position that they're in right now. Obviously, they have an MVP candidate in Jose Ramirez, and they have Shane Bieber, who's being Shane Bieber for the most part this year. But that's
who else in that lineup scares you?
No one.
Like Ahmad Rosario's having a good year.
Oh well, yeah. Andres Gimenez is having a pretty good year. I mean, but
is it Gimenez? Yeah, Gimenez is having a good year.
Gimenez might be an all-star actually. Yeah. But they, outside of Ramirez, Gimenez, maybe, a couple other guys, they just, it's not a great roster.
To Fran Mill.
Yeah.
but even the rotation gets kind of iffy after Bieber. So they got a decent bullpen, but that's about it. It's not a very well put together roster. So I think they're gonna slide, and Chicago should be better than they are. But I mean, I think Tony La Russa might be that incompetent. So
yeah,
the fact that
and
that
they've
guy
also
still
suffered a lot of injuries as well. Like it's
Right.
just kind of a recipe for disaster. And
they're getting Eloy back today, so that should help them. But yeah, I think it's those 5 teams for those 3 spots. And then obviously, I think Cleveland's going to slide. I think Texas is going to slide. I think Baltimore is going to slide. But you never know. Teams tend to stick around, and we'll see how the trade deadline, how these teams react to the trade deadline. Do they buy a little? Do they sell a little? Still a lot to be decided, and that's great. Seattle, imagine 2 weeks ago us sitting here saying, well, we're going to be talking about the wild card standings on June 6th because the Mariners are going to have a legitimate shot to go into the break, as the leader of one of those wild card spots. And like you said, it's a very small chance, but it's not zero. It's not zero. Seattle goes in and they go 7-3 or something over these next 10. All bets are off. At that point, they've got a decent shot to be in the lead, or at the very least within a game or two of a team like Toronto, who is fading a little bit. They lost 5 in a row, so we'll see what happens. Big series, obviously, this weekend, but I would say they've already avoided the disaster scenario. Going 1-5 or 0-6. So if they could just take even 2 from Toronto, I'd be pretty happy with that. That's a really good week for Seattle.
Yeah, that would be massive.
Yeah,
that would be massive. Yeah, even if they get 1, honestly, I feel decent about that. Just don't get swept, basically, and I think you feel pretty good. And hey, who knows? Baseball is weird. I had no expectations of them being able to do what they did down in San Diego. So,
right.
In Toronto, they're catching Toronto at probably the best possible time that they could. So that offense right now, and we'll talk about it, on tomorrow's episode, but the offense right now is really struggling for Toronto. It's really starting to capitalize.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention their starting pitching right now is in a bit of a flux because Gossman's getting scratched on Thursday. Yeah. There's still a possibility he makes a start against Seattle, particularly on Sunday. And the reason Sunday is an issue is because Yusei Kikuchi is unfortunately not found consistency with his new team, and there's calls to remove him from the rotation already. So, the Blue Jays rotation kind of up in the air right now. And also Gossman has kind of gone the opposite direction of Robbie Ray over the last, month or so. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But, obviously momentum's only as good as the next day starting pitcher. If the Mariners go out there and strike out 12 times against Barrios, then it doesn't matter that the Blue Jays have won or had lost 6 in a row or whatever,
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But big series, on a big home series against I don't want to call them a rival, but some people like to think they're a rival for some reason.
Yeah, especially with my personal connection to both teams. I have a little extra something here heading into the series, and also all the Canadians that come down to Seattle makes it kind of a road game in a way for the Mariners, and that's annoying.
I've always said next to nice Canadians. That's never been a problem for me, but I do hear a lot of stories about like rude Canadians coming down. I'm like, okay. No. Are you just mad because they were there at all? Is that really what it is?
That's true. It could be that, yeah.
Yes, but it'll be a good time.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, if you guys are looking for a sign to bring to the ballpark, I would take Ty's suggestion and just ask him what time the Leafs game is on.
That's a good one. All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dan Gonzalez, the CANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen of the day, just like you do here every single day. Now make your second listen of the day. Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we will see you tomorrow. Peace.